There are three parts to any story. Three parts, three elements, three things, if you will. These are narration, description, and dialogue. Now, narration is what drives the story along from point A to point B, then to C, to D, to E, to F, and ultimately to Z. It is the words, the paragraphs, the sentences, the things, the stuff that you have put together to make something, be it an event, a scene, a plot, move from this point to this point. So let's say Jimmy jumps out of the window and makes a run for it. Then Jimmy gets arrested by the police. In between Jimmy jumping and Jimmy running and Jimmy being arrested are all these things. That is narration, the moving of a plot, of a scene from this point to this point. Now, to drive your narrative, to make your narrative interesting, we use description and we use dialogue. And when it comes to character development, where does that development best sit? Does it best sit under description? Does it best sit under dialogue? Or is it a combination of the two? How do we best develop a character, move the character along, make the character more resonant, more relatable, something that your readers are going to enjoy, not enjoy, love, like, hate? How are you portraying your character? Where does it sit? In description, dialogue, or both? Let's discuss this. When it comes to description, I like to use a principle that I call the hospital waiting room. To illustrate that, let's do a little exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes and I want you to now think back to a time when you were in a hospital waiting room. Most of us, if not all of us, have at some stage, be it for good reasons or not for good reasons, been in a hospital waiting room, an emergency room, be it what it is. And I want you to think about what that room looks like. Look at the layout, look what you can see in front of you, to the left, to the right, what is on the ground, what is behind, what are you sitting on. And if I do this exercise, I'm seeing the nurse's station, the reception, I think you probably call it, on that side. Next to that is the doors that lead into the emergency area itself. I think they probably call that a ward. And next to that then is the doorway going to doctors' rooms. And I know that that also goes into the main part of the hospital, radiology and so on and so forth. And the room is pretty large. It looks pretty sterile. It is white. There's white tiles. There's white walls. Directly ahead of me on the wall in front of me is a television set. There is a table in the middle with magazines on it. There's a pot plant in this corner. There's a pot plant in this corner. All the chairs are pretty much the same. Steel, white, probably some sort of a laminate, blue for the most part with a bit of a pattern on it, sort of a checked type of pattern, and they are covered in plastic. So that's my waiting room. And you may have seen something similar to that. You probably saw something quite different to that. Now, here's the thing when it comes to the principle of the hospital waiting room. All that I've just described to you now probably put those images directly into your head. And all I've really succeeded in doing here is robbing you of your own experience. It was my imagination, it's what I saw, but it's not necessarily what you see when you think of a hospital waiting room. And that's why this is such a dangerous tool, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to give your readers too much information. Don't give them too much information. The more information that you give them on a scene, be it a room that you're describing, be it a vehicle, be it a park they're in, a forest they're in, a mountaintop, the more information that you give out, the less opportunity you leave for your reader to use their own imagination, to color in the space, to put whatever details need to be put in so that the story, the scene, the event comes alive for them. In exactly the same way, the way we choose to describe a scene, a place, an event, we tend to do the same thing with our characters, with the people in our story. And the same way we played the hospital waiting room game, let's do something else. Let's now think of, picture, imagine one of our good friends, okay? And let's bring that person to mind. And let's look at that person and describe their physical characteristics. That person may be short or tall. Look at their height, look at their build. Are they bearded or not? Long hair, short hair, what's the color of their hair? What's the color of their eyes? What's the shape of their nose? What's the shape of their jaw? Do they have a particular favorite type of clothing they like to wear, be it a hoodie, be it a jacket? Maybe they're a t-shirt kind of person. Do they favor certain types of colors? Do they favor certain types of footwear? What do their hands look like? Do they have identifying marks, be it scars, be it tattoos? And bring that particular person to mind and put them in front of you and look and see and describe in your mind what that person looks like. And if you do so, you will quickly come to realize that if asked to describe that person, you probably could do so to more or less some variation of success. You'll be able to tell another person, this is what my friend looks like. My friend is this tall, is this big, has this color hair, this color eyes, kind of looks like this, has a tattoo on this, has a scar on that. You'll be able to describe what that person looks like. But have you described who that person is? So you see, in my Rudy and Raven series, what I do not do is give you too much information about the characters. Yes, we have an idea of hair color, we have an idea of the type of clothes they typically wear on any given day, what they might choose, and we have a sort of kind of idea of what colors they might choose as well. Raven likes purple for argument's sake, as many teenage girls do. Rudy, we don't know, we have no idea. I don't even tell you their ages, and the reason I don't do this is because of a simple principle. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Description begins in the writer's imagination, but should end in the reader's imagination. The more I tell you about what they look like, the more you are unable to relate that character to someone you know, someone you've met, a good friend, an acquaintance, or even yourself. I take away the ability for your imagination to function and for you to color in all the details. So having said that, and coming back to the beginning again, how do we develop a character? Does it happen in description, or does it happen in dialogue? And I'm going to venture to say that it does not happen in description. Now, dialogue. Dialogue is what your characters are saying. That could be external dialogue, could be external communication. It could be the things that they are saying to other characters. It could be arguments they're having, it could be discussions. It could be ordering something, it could be anywhere, anything. It's what they are physically saying. And that dialogue can also be internal. It can be what your characters are thinking about a particular scene, about an event, what's going on inside their minds. That is also dialogue. And dialogue can be a delight to read, but it can also be deadly. So let me give you a practical example of some dialogue. Now, this is a dying farmer describing the alien presence which has invaded his well. And this is how he does it. Nothing. The color, it burns. Cold and wet, but it burns. It lived in the well. I seen it, a kind of smoke. Just like the flowers last spring. The well shone at night, everything alive, sucked the life out of everything. In the stone, it must have come in that stone, poisoned the whole place. Don't know what it wants. That round thing the men from the college dug out of the stone. It was that same color, just the same, like the flowers and plants, seeds. I seen it the first time this week. It beats down your mind and then gets you all burned up. It comes from some place where things ain't as they is here. One of them professors said so. I don't know about you. I know I haven't been in the presence of too many dying farmers as they've described an alien presence that's invaded their well, but I do know that that particular piece of dialogue does not have a huge amount of a ring of truth to it. There's just not a lot of realism. There's something just fundamentally incorrect and wrong with it. And I hate to cast aspersions on people because that particular one comes from a book called The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm probably going to get shot down for saying bad things about H.P. Lovecraft. But this is a man who has written millions of words and millions of people have read his words, but he's dedicated less than 5,000 of those words to actual dialogue. So he's probably not a guy who relied on dialogue, or more importantly, He probably just maybe didn't believe in his own ability to create dialogue. And some people can and some people can't. But it was like Clint Eastwood said, man, a man's got to know his limitations. Let me give you another example of how dialogue can get used, how dialogue is used and should be used. In this case, we've got a car trip. All of us have been on a road trip, be it a day thing, be it longer at some stage, be it a half an hour, be it an hour, be it a 2 hour trip. We all know what it's like to be in a car, whether it's in the passenger seat, whether you're driving or whether you're in the back, and you're in command of the music or in command of the snacks. We've all done it, we've been there before. And when we're writing a scene like that, remember we're writing the narrative. So we're going from the beginning to the end. Beginning of the car trip, the end of the car trip. And yeah, we may color in some of the stuff and we may describe what we're seeing outside the window. We might talk about what music we're listening to. But more importantly, what we'd really like to do with this particular thing to advance the narrative and at the same time to develop and expand our characters and to tell our readers something about them is to use some dialogue. Here is a car trip, and this is what happened in a section of that car trip. Okay, here we go. There's a mom, there's a dad, there's 2 kids in the back seat. This is how it went down. You guys want to play a game? Raven looks up from her book. A game, Mom repeated again. What kind of game? Like I Spy or something, said Mom, turning in the passenger seat and looking back. She reached across to grab some chips out of the open bag between Rudy and Raven. Gee, said Rudy, I Spy. What, said Dad, you used to love that game. Yes, said Raven, like 1,000 years ago. Mom gave up trying to wrestle chips out and just took the whole bag, offering some to Dad. So what do you want to play, she asked. Well, said Raven, looking over at Rudy. He shook his head. We don't really want to play anything at all, she answered. Oh, said Mom. Well, I guess. There's this new group at school I've joined, Raven said. New group, asked Dad. Uh-huh, it's called the Flat Earth Club. You're a flat earther now. Didn't know it was the thing, the vogue around school, said Dad. Raven laughed. I knew you'd say that. No, it's nothing like that. It's a, how should I say this, discussion group. It's a discussion thing. We, I don't know, meet and talk about things. You know very little about the club you've just joined, it seems, said Dad. I haven't been yet. It's every Tuesday. I'll be going on the first one next week, my first one. Okay, so what kinds of things do you talk about? Raven pondered that one for a moment. Okay, look, I don't really know, not yet. But Sarita, you know Sarita? Dad shook his head. She's in my English class, a boarder. She runs it, or something. I don't think she runs it. I think she was just advertising it at the club's fair. Dr. Pinar runs it. It's a place to have discussions, talk about the events of the day, I suppose, or current events, or ideas, or concepts, that sort of thing. No subject is taboo, Sarita says, as long as there is respect. Hence the name, said Dad, the Flat Earth Club. Sure, said Raven. It's kind of a fun way to say, bring your stuff and we'll talk about it. So this Dr. Pinar, he is what? My English teacher. Your English teacher. And he heads this up? Yes. Does he present the subjects? I don't know, I'll see. And what do you know about him? Know about him? Dad paused for a moment. Mom was looking at him with a half smile. Yes, like, how long has he been at the school? What was he doing before that? How old is he? What is his background? What university did he go to? Hold up, Colonel, said Mom, laughing and holding her hand out to him. What's the angle? No angle, he laughed, no angle, but you know these groups. No, said Raven, leaning forward in her chair. Rudy felt a current. He looked up from his game and started paying attention. No what? Dad asked. No, said Raven. I don't know about these groups. What about these groups? Easy does it, chicken, said Dad, throwing up his hand. Don't read anything into it. I'm just being an interested party. Uh-huh, said Raven, sitting back and picking up her book again. An uncomfortable silence settled over the car. Rudy looked from one parent to another, then back to Raven. Each one seemed on the verge of saying something. He scratched an itch on his cheek and turned back to his game. It's just, said Dad, breaking the silence. Here it comes, thought Rudy. Sometimes, you know, Dad continues, with these groups, sometimes. Rudy glanced over at Raven. She was still looking at her book, but her eyes were fixed in one place. The things they talk about, it gives people ideas. Rudy watched as the cover started bending as Raven's hands tightened into fists. What kind of ideas? Said Raven, not looking up. Her voice sounded pleasant enough, but Rudy's trouble meter went into the red. See what happened there? See what's gone on? You didn't have to be told that there is a problem brewing, perhaps a personality issue, something between Raven and her father. But from the dialogue, well, we definitely get a sense that something is wrong. He said something, she said something, he said something, she said something, and she took it and she ran with it. And now they are starting to bicker and fight and complain with each other, but yet not one piece of that piece of writing has said they have a problem with each other. It all came out during what they said. So dialogue is what gives your characters their character. Well-crafted dialogue will tell you if a person is smart or not. It will indicate dishonesty, or if they're amusing. You'll catch tension between two people, or love and respect, by what they say and how they interact. You don't have to tell your readers whether a person is funny or not, whether they're in love or lying or dumb as a doorknob. Have them say it instead. Remember that description begins in the writer's imagination, but must end in the reader's imagination, because at the end of the day, the best stories are about the people rather than the event itself. And remember that over-describing your character, describing them too much, only tells a reader what the character looks like. It doesn't tell you anything about who the character is. So if you've enjoyed this, if you found this useful, like the video. If you haven't yet, if you're here for the first time, go ahead, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, keep up to date with all of my tips, tricks, news, views, and information. Until next time, cheers.